Helen, if you don't mind, Patrick, just for note taking, do you want to do a quick roll call of the members here?
Sure. Yeah. I'll start off. Yeah, Pat Fitzgerald, member present. I don't know how to go around.
Lana Garcia, member present.
Logan Dunning, member present.
Rick Emmelheinz, member present.
Fabulous. We have Mel England, staff liaison present.
Aidan Littleton, Great Business Program Coordinator present.
Tracy Savina, member present.
Perfect. And then our two guests, which if you all want to introduce yourself and then just hop right on in.
Sounds good. All right. Well, it's so nice to meet everyone here, especially this group, because sustainability is all something that we really care about as a mission-based organization at RS. And so my name is Helen Lee. I'm a senior consultant with RS, and we are the consultants that support the Colorado Circular Communities, or C3. And that's an enterprise program from the state that is dedicated to supporting Colorado's communities, businesses, local governments to improve waste diversion in the state. And so we're one of the consultants that support this project. And it's something that this project has been something that we've been working on since February of last year. So it's a long time coming, and we have so much exciting information to share with you today. But before I get into the specifics, Joelle, why don't you introduce yourself as well?
Thanks, Helen. Hi, everyone. My name is Joelle Friedlander. I'm an analyst at RS, and I'm based out of Denver, but I primarily focus on supporting our Colorado projects, including South Metro with Englewood.
Thanks, Joelle. And Joelle was actually a key player when we were digging around trash and doing our waste composition study, which we'll be talking about momentarily. And so really glad that she's able to join us today. So today we're here to talk trash. Sorry, I have to use that joke. Comes with the job. We are here to talk about the South Metro Waste Diversion Plan. And this effort has been a project that has been worked on with the cities of Englewood, Sheridan, Littleton, and Centennial. And so the agenda for today, I'm going to talk about kind of what our mission is, what the plan development process looked like, the waste composition and generation that we found during the process of the study, and the regional and city-specific strategies that we recommended for the city to look at in terms of prioritizing their waste diversion programs. So starting off with the mission, the goal for the region was the 4 cities came together, Centennial, Englewood, Littleton, Sheridan, and they submitted this grant proposal to C3, to Colorado, and they wanted to set this ambitious goal of progressing to a system that favors equitable waste reduction and waste diversion strategies that's driven by data and best practices. And so that equity piece was really important, and it was also really critical that we were forming strategies based on metrics, based on proven strategies. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about the criteria of how strategies were picked. But from a lot of the conversations we have with stakeholders is that residents were saying, you know, they agree or strongly agree that they support efforts to increase recycling and or composting in Colorado. So in the South Metro region, which was really exciting to see. So in the plan development process, which again, this spanned since February 24, we did a series of activities, including a baseline assessment. We did some waste generation and modeling, as well as a composition study. We engaged with a number of stakeholders, and it included talking with residents through focus groups. We did a residential survey and sent out mailers to randomly sampled residents. We did a resident champion training, which I understand that a member from the Sustainability Commission also attended, which is awesome. We spoke with waste haulers and conducted interviews. And with a lot of the learnings, we then created the gaps and opportunities and looked at, okay, what are the great strategies that we can do, adopt and consider to move the needle for waste diversion. We also spoke at a regional waste summit. It was a 2-day summit that we did with the 4 cities, with council members from and elected officials from each of the cities. So Mayor Thaniel was also there and helped some of those conversations. And this engagement process was, it reached over 43,500 community interactions across the region. And you can kind of see, all the different ways we were engaging and wanted to get feedback from stakeholders. And just quickly, baseline and background again, this is a regional plan that looked at Centennial, Englewood, Sheridan, and Littleton, and everyone has different demographics and baseline information. Collectively, the South Metro cities is a population of 190,000 residents, roughly. And we looked at all kinds of different demographic information, such as household size, income levels, persons below poverty levels, education, language, and how many people live in multifamily versus single family housing, and employer firms. And these demographics were really important because we wanted to make sure when we were doing outreach or stakeholder engagement that we were considering language needs that might be required. So we'll get into that a little bit, and just considering equity and demographics across the region. So one of the things that we did was a survey. And so we conducted this in both English and Spanish. Some of the key findings that we had in the survey was 58% of the respondents shared they were willing to compost both yard and food waste, which was really exciting. They really emphasized food waste reduction and recovery, and how they really thought food waste was a really big opportunity for waste diversion. What we also learned was residents were saying that low trust was actually one of the larger challenges perceived by residents in South Metro, and not knowing what to recycle is another barrier. So this was really interesting, because how many times have you all may have heard on the news, like, is recycling getting recycled? Is it going to a different country? Where is that going? Is recycling actually happening? And so low trust was actually a barrier that we identified from both the residents, and also heard from haulers as well. We also heard in the surveys that residents really wanted to see additional recycling drop-off locations as a need, and that was a important aspect that we also heard from the focus groups as well. So in the focus groups, we conducted 3. We had a dedicated focus group for multifamily complexes, businesses, and disadvantaged communities. And we provide live interpretation services to ensure that if there was anyone who is speaking a different language, that we can make sure that they have access to that, the information that we were providing. And what we found was that every participant had access to trash services, but fewer than half had curbside recycling services from these focus groups. And one business, they were sharing that they had contracted composting services. So saw some trends that, businesses are starting to get interested in composting. Some disadvantaged or multifamily complexes might have some troubles with accessing recycling, which is consistent to what we've heard in other Colorado communities. So I just listed some barriers here that we heard: lack of access and space and dumpster capacity for multifamily. We also heard that some multifamily residents, they don't really have the choice in terms of recycling. It's really up to the property manager or the landlord. For business, lack of access to the decision-making process. So sometimes if you are a tenant of maybe a strip mall or something like that, they might not have access to some of those decision-making powers to maybe solicit new services that could help with the waste diversion. Disadvantaged communities, hearing that there's a lack of reliable resources and services, and that causes a potential barrier. And what we heard from all 3 focus groups is they all had concerns that there's too many haulers in the community, and they were concerned about child safety and property and road damage, which is going to lead to some of these strategies we're going to talk about today. And then lastly, 3 focus groups talked about additional drop-off services and access to hard-to-recycle materials in the community. So other than the survey and the focus groups, we also trained resident champions, and this was we purposefully did it virtually because we wanted to accommodate anyone with different work schedules or who might not have transportation access. We want everyone to be able to attend the training, and it was recorded so it could be used in the future. But we created, in addition to the training, a training toolkit that was developed in English and Spanish. And it included 6 major sections of information to help residents if they wanted to talk about recycling with their neighbors. What is the community benefits of recycling? What are some frequently asked questions? What are other tips and best practices and local resources? And common recyclables and what to keep out in recycling as a contaminant. So this was a big part of the project that we had. And really going back to the data-driven aspect, right? So we wanted to find out from South Metro specifically, what does the waste composition look like? What are people generating? What are they throwing away in the trash? And what is going into the recycling? And of the recycling, is it getting, contaminated? And what is supposed to be, what can be recovered? So Joelle really helped lead the efforts here. Over 10,000 pounds of trash and recycling were sorted by hand. We had some partners that helped us provide the space, and we got the materials from each of the 4 cities, and we had and the full methodology and approaches on our website, southmetrowastediversion.org, and the outcomes. But overall, what we learned is that in the South Metro residential trash, almost half of the waste that is disposed of in the landfill is organic waste. That is a huge opportunity. And I'm probably preaching to the choir. I know you guys are the Sustainability Commission, and this is probably obvious that there's a lot of organic waste that could be composted or diverted from landfill. So that is a big opportunity that we learned. Recyclables. So there were some recyclable materials that could be recycled in the recycling bin, but we noticed that it was in the trash. So some of that is, how can we get the behavior change? How can we increase access and outreach to the residents so they know what can be recycled? And then the other category is kind of everything else. So the liquids, textiles, electronics, batteries, C&D, residual. And again, the full breakout can be found on the detailed memo on our website. Let me pause. Rick, I see your hand up.
Yeah, Helen, I've got a question. How is this, what are the percentages based upon weight, volume, what?
Tonnage, correct, by weight.
By weight, thank you.
Yeah, so going back to kind of talk about the methodology. So we had haulers help us bring material from the city-specific routes, trash and recycling. They were dropped off at a transfer station. So they were tipped. We were randomly sampling from multiple sample piles, 200 pounds at a minimum to comply with the ASTM requirements. And so, everyone in full PPE gear, you can see we then sorted into all these different material categories, yard waste, food waste, even the plastics were broken out into number 1 plastic, number 2 natural plastic, so it goes into the whole gambit. And we weighed them after we sorted into these buckets or larger containers. And that's how that tonnage represents the composition.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. So in the commercial waste, the organic stream was less. We saw less yard waste, but there's food waste definitely in there. We also saw a ton of recyclable materials that can be recovered. Which we saw that as a huge opportunity. We need to really tap into how can we get commercial and multifamily programs to really capture that recycling going in the trash. So liquids, textiles, electronics, batteries, C&D, all these other materials were part of that. And again, that really big breakout can be found in the memo of all the different details. But just wanted to show you this because the opportunity is there's some low-hanging fruit. maybe pun intended there. There's some recycling that can be captured, and we're going to talk a little bit about the EPR law that's coming online for Colorado, but there's some materials that are ready to be captured and recovered. And so again, with this composition, we then looked at generation. So where is South Metro going to be in the next 10 years from now until 2035? What is, how much of that is going to be generated? So South Metro and the city of Inglewood is currently recycling about 15% of its its waste, 15% of its waste. And the majority of that remaining waste, 85%, is going to landfill. So we estimate that by 2035, 260,000 tons will be generated annually by the South Metro region, which is equivalent to, I think it was 21 Eiffel Towers. I can find that, but it was a lot of waste. So yeah, we wanted to find, how can we find strategies to help us divert that materials that are going into landfills? Because these are all materials and commodities with a value. So what we learned is that South Metro, approximately 78% of what is generated can be recovered through recycling, composting, or special collections. There are some materials that can be recovered now with existing programs, and some that can be recovered with new programs like adding composting services, for example. So a lot of opportunity for recovery. I wanted to spend a few minutes to talk a little bit about the new state law that's coming online in Colorado, EPR, or Extended Producer Responsibility. So Colorado passed the Producer Responsibility Program, HB 22, which requires companies that sell packaging materials, they will fund a statewide recycling system for those materials. So starting in 2026, Colorado will be reimbursing communities and service providers to cover 100% of eligible net costs associated with recycling. That means everyone, residents, will have free recycling services starting in 2026, single family, multifamily, and their goal is to make recycling as convenient as disposing of something with your trash system. So in the program plan that Circular Action Alliance, who is the organization that's going to implement some of these things, they write that reimbursement of drop-off and curbside collection costs will be covered, such as capital costs, education and outreach, operational costs, reasonable profit margin, and eligible administrative expenses. And this is all currently in draft form and under review, but what I'm trying to point out here is there's money for local communities to tap into and should continue to stay engaged with the state and CAA. So this provides a little bit of context on some of the strategies that we're going to talk about and how it could potentially be funded. All right, so I watched your Sustainability Commission meeting, and I saw there was a lot of questions on how some strategies were selected for the plan for Inglewood and the region. So I wanted to kind of share our criteria was we wanted to make sure that there was proven success to some strategies. You know, we didn't want to propose something that was not really tried in other communities across the United States. It was something that was proven. Two, there's potential for diversion impact. So diverting from landfills and recovering, that was a criteria. High to medium interest from stakeholders. And again, you know, we talked about the survey, the focus groups, the Waste Summit that we did to speak with elected officials. So all of that stakeholder engagement helped us inform which strategies to prioritize for each city. And then lastly, potential for increasing access and consideration for equity. So, you know, how can we make sure that when we form these strategies, we're thinking of, you know, every member of our community, and how can we phase that over time? So one part of this scope of our project was that we were asked to really focus on single family strategies first in the short to midterm, and then, having commercial and multifamily. But we know that that is a huge sector. So we do have a lot of commercial multifamily strategies that is in the plan. So starting with the regional strategies, I think Mel shared this slide at the meeting last week. I'm going to go through one by one to further explain what this means. So I have some slides associated, but with all strategies, we had a diversion impact and fiscal impact. And fiscal impact, we looked at kind of purchasing thresholds that cities have. So 10,000 or a P card range, or if you need to do 3 bids for a quote, or if you have to go out for an official solicitation like an RFP or ITB. So starting with the first regional strategy was recycling drop-off centers. So in our practice, what we found is that best practice is to have communities have recycling drop-off centers every 50,000 residents. It's a good sweet spot. So with 190,000 or almost 200,000 residents of that metro, we're recommending 4. And this, again, was identified as a need from our focus groups and residential surveys. And these drop-off centers, it can be scaled small, it can be scaled large. You can add on additional hard-to-recycle materials based on funding availability in the future. But really having that kind of central system where residents can drop off materials is really helpful, especially when there's surges in material. There's typically people move in and move out season. You get a ton of cardboard, doesn't fit into your recycling cart, or maybe your multifamily, there's a trash chute, but you don't have enough recycling capacity. Those are all good times where you can bring and drop off your recycling for a drop off. So that's the first regional strategy. The second one is improving organics diversion access and supporting a large-scale organics processing facility. And I listened into your meeting last week, and I think some of the questions that came up was, how come this is, maybe like mid to long-term range of not immediately the first 5 years? And our thought process was that, if we're talking about supporting infrastructure, and we, of course, want to encourage public-private partnerships, and I don't think cities want to get in the business of running and owning a facility. They probably want to work with specialized experts on that. But there's different pathways. And again, we thought that in order to get to that point, we need to walk before we run. There's a lot of different steps we need to do to get there. And not to say that, underlying feasibility studies or education and outreach to start some of these organics diversion won't happen earlier. But in terms of thinking through that processing infrastructure, we thought it would be more appropriate 5-10 years later out. Hopefully that makes sense. And again, stop me if you have questions. I'll keep going in the meantime. So the next strategy regionally we had was supporting multifamily and commercial recycling and composting. And we think this is just so important, especially in Inglewood, because and out of the 4 regional cities, Inglewood has one of the higher housing stock that is specifically multifamily. So 37% is multifamily. And 1,500 employer firms that we've got from the census. And what we really want to emphasize is that there's a lot of material coming from these sectors that are currently getting disposed of, as you've seen in the waste characterization study. And so we want to encourage or require by ordinance so that property owners and managers provide recycling and or composting services to their tenants. I know we have Aiden here, but one of the opportunities I think that exists is leveraging potentially existing green business programs. How can we work together hand in hand to encourage recycling and composting programs in the city? And then lastly, offering technical assistance for property managers. So these are some strategies, and one thing that I'll pause and want to reiterate is that a lot of these strategies it will have to go before council one by one, because if it's an ordinance, for example, staff will need to bring the proposed ordinance language and any maybe associated staff reports. And if there's any, programs or services that have different implementation paths, we want the staff to bring that would be specific to the community. And so what we're presenting here with the plan is this is kind of the direction we want the city to go in terms of priorities. It's an iterative plan, and not to, prevent Mel from going crazy and adding all these other strategies and whatever is really needed for Inglewood. But these are the recommended ones that we were thinking based on all the stakeholder and baseline assessment we did, that would be the priority. Okay, so before I go into city specific questions, let me pause, and I see Mel's hand here.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that, what Helen said, each one would go through to city council on its own, and the Sustainability Commission would have ample say in what that looks like. The positive of bringing a blueprint like this to city council to hopefully adopt is it allows staff to look into this, because if it's not already in a strategic plan, we really don't have purview to go look at implementing these if council hasn't given that general direction.
Yeah, and the other benefit, I think, Mel, to add on to that is you guys are working regionally, which these are the projects that I get most excited about when there's collaboration. And are there opportunities for cities to work together of maybe combining ordinances, so that you have a similar ordinance from one jurisdiction to another? Can you work together to find economies of scale for certain, services by bundling things together? There's so many different pathways where you can find efficiencies and power by collaboration. And so I'm just really excited that for South Metro, this was, 4 cities together saying like, this is something we want to do together as a region. So that said, let me move into city-specific strategies. So we had, in the scope of the project, we were asked to select kind of 7 city-specific strategies. We kind of went a little bit more because we wanted to add more. But I'm going to go through one by one to kind of explain what the strategy is, what the impacts are. So the first one is we heard when we were doing our gap analysis that, when compost is generated, there's sometimes that finished compost that doesn't get used. And so we wanted to make sure, and for any recycling or diversion activities, these materials have to have an end market. They have to have a home. And if they just sit in a pile, it's not quite sustainable. So for this, we want to close the loop. How can we use that local finished compost in projects, whether it's municipal projects like parks or public works or et cetera? So we kind of set the strategy to work with internal city departments to utilize that finished compost in projects that make sense. And also to encourage developers to utilize finished compost when they're able to do so. So that's the first strategy. And I think there was a question on how come this is like one diversion impact symbol. And I wanted to answer that. And how that diversion impact is what by weight is the material being diverted from landfills, because that was a metric we wanted to capture. There's definitely tremendous benefit of utilizing finished compost to, healthier soils and reducing erosion and supporting local composting infrastructure. But in terms of diversion impact, at that point, the diversion has already been claimed in other strategies where we say we're going to actually compost the food and yard waste. So this, the strategy to actually utilize the finished compost, the diversion impact at that point is minimal, but there is a significant environmental impact. I hope that answers the question. I don't recall who it was, but whoever brought that up. Okay, let me keep going. So the next one is establishing a construction and demolition ordinance. So C&D recycling ordinances have been proven really effective, and it can require contractors to sort and recycle materials such as wood, metal, and cardboard from projects. And it really does rely on making sure that you have the end markets or infrastructure and a way to have some compliance. What I will note here is that in the sustainability waste diversion world, we try to encourage deconstruction and salvage first before demolition, because there's higher likelihood that you get quality material that you can divert and preserve that material for reuse. Instead of breaking everything, you're preserving it. So with some of these ordinances, what we had included for, elected officials to look at to try to save them some homework is some example ordinances from other communities. So we have some here from Fort Collins, Lakewood, we have Boulder, but just to show you that there's communities in Colorado, neighbors that have implemented this. It's not just something we made up. The next one is implementing food scraps curbside for single family. So again, we talked about how organics on the residential, what is going to trash is almost 50%. But in terms of food waste, that was City of Englewood's almost 20% of the total waste generated. So it's significant. And how you can implement food scraps composting, there's a number of different pathways, but a dedicated curbside service for this program can significantly divert materials. You can also consider whether you want to co-collect food and yard waste. There's a lot of different pathways, but the point here is we want to try to reduce food waste and to try to recover that food waste from going to landfills. All right, I thought I heard someone asking a question. Next one is leveraging Colorado's EPR law for recycling. So this screenshot is shared from the Circular Action Alliance. Again, that's the organization that's going to be implementing the EPR law. And as I mentioned earlier, the goal is that by starting 2026, they're going to be paying communities and to have 100% of recycling services be covered by the state. So their goal is by 2030, recycling is as convenient as trash pickup, no matter where you live. And how they do that is, one, they're going to reimburse costs for curbside service. Two, boost participation where access exists. Build capacity in underserved areas. And so drop-offs could be an option. And lastly, enhancing systems and recycling more items. How can we get materials that currently are not typically captured for recycling to be captured for recycling? And there's a lot of different ways organizations are working towards that. So to really fully benefit, cities can consider a number of different policies that are recommended in our plan, including equal space ordinance, which I'll talk about more, or haulers licensing to make sure you're getting the data, pay-as-you-throw pricing to try to get volume-based pricing so that residents, if you generate less trash, you don't have to pay as much. Those are other policies to consider. And also organized hauling contracts, which I'll talk about more in a sec. Okay, so the first ordinance I just talked about was equal space ordinance. And basically what this is the idea that for commercial properties to have the same amount of space for recycling infrastructure as for trash. So kind of a one-to-one to support recycling access. And again, this is really important because, multifamily and commercial properties, they're a big significant part of the waste generated. So we have some example ordinances here, Superior, Broomfield, Boulder, Fort Collins. But this is a great way to improve access for, customers, residents, et cetera. The next strategy is supporting the transition to organized residential collection when financially accessibility could be conducive for majority of Englewood residents. And so we know that this was single hauler was something that Englewood explored a couple years ago, but a couple years ago was a very different place than where we are today. when Inglewood was first evaluating single hauler, it was kind of following COVID and the pandemic. It was also pre-EPR law. So all this conversation about the state that will be paying for recycling services moving forward, starting in 26, that was not part of the conversation. So it's a really different time period now. And again, when we were surveying and speaking with residents of South Metro, they were expressing their concerns. We have way too many trucks going down in our neighborhood for the same, same carts. So how can, and they were, mentioning safety concerns, wear and tear on roads. So by having an organized collection system, which is when a municipality or city, or maybe the region, they contract with a hauler, or it can be multiple haulers. For example, having one hauler for trash and the other one for recycling, for example. So it doesn't have to be a single hauler. It's just that for a zone, there's a single hauler. It's not multiple haulers going down one neighborhood. Right. So the municipality organizes this through a contract. And the benefits of this is you can lower and stabilize costs for residents. And I'll point out this chart over here. You can see that for the city of Sheridan, their 25% are in this $11 to $20 a month block of what they pay for their cost of trash or service, which also includes recycling for Sheridan. And then for the rest of the communities, you can see that there's actually larger costs. And so Sheridan is a single hauler community now, and the rest you can see kind of the cost of trash services just being higher. And so it's, efficiencies because you have the same truck, multiple trucks going down one neighborhood. So there's opportunities to reduce truck traffic. And as a result, wear and tear of roads, which paving costs are a big concern. It's accounting for public works projects, and expanding the ability to expand services is possible through a single hauler program. You can, bundle and require recycling to be provided. You might also want to add, hey, we want to have yard waste services, or we want to have Christmas trees picked up, whatever it is, that can be built into the contract. So a number of communities in Colorado have single hauler or organized collections, and I put some examples here in their codes. Okay, a few more. We have next ongoing community group outreach and engagement. And this chart here on the right is specific data to Englewood. And what residents of Englewood were saying that their thoughts of the largest barriers for recycling was, one, low trust that recycling is actually recycled. So a lot of people have concerns about that. Two, they don't know what to recycle. It's hard to know what to recycle. It changes all the time. Three, it costs too much, which will not be a barrier starting 2026 with EPR. And really, because CAA plans to reimburse communities that have organized collections first, really there's a benefit to getting that going. For recycling guidelines often change. And so a lot of these top barriers that I'm talking about here can really be tackled with effective education and outreach. And there's some, steps to increase that by, tabling or training or updating the website and communicating with the community together. But we really wanted to have a goal that was really dedicated to outreach and engagement, where we are trying to provide access and equitable information to residents. 8, exploring business waste diversion grants. So again, looking at Aiden over there, because I know he's our new, new business program manager. Is that right, Mel? Or maybe I'm thinking of a different city.
No, he's Englewood, Littleton, and Sheridan's Green Business Program Coordinator.
Oh, that's so cool. I didn't know that it was Tri-City, but that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, working regionally is just awesome. for efficiency. But yeah, what are some business grants that we can provide to support that sector who wants to start composting? So high volume food generators like restaurants, they may face costs for barriers to organics collections. And local governments, if they can provide grants or incentives to boost that business participation would be really helpful. And when we were talking with businesses and we were talking with haulers, they were suggesting that there's funding opportunities to support whether it's, infrastructure like bins or signs or training or hauling and stuff like that. That would be really helpful. So wanted to provide, how can we provide access to businesses who might need support? And then lastly, Mel really wanted to make sure we include this in here because it's not just about diversion, right? It's about reuse. Looking at that waste pyramid of we really want to start source reduction first, reduce, reuse, recycle, or compost, then landfill at the disposal at the very end. So wanted to think of how can we create ways to reduce waste. And so fix-it clinics are something that a lot of communities adopt across the country, and they can really empower residents and work with volunteers, with libraries or nonprofits to provide the space for people to train others on how to reuse or fix materials. So that is another great way to have, a tangible way to get folks to reuse more materials that they have. So that is all the strategies regionally and city-wise that I went to provide more detail that Mel gave a preview last week. In terms of next steps, what we are looking for and requesting is a letter of support. We are planning to go to council to request passing a resolution to adopt the South Metro Waste Diversion Plan. So that's our next steps, is presenting a condensed version of this to your elected officials to try to get this plan adopted. And we want to continue working collaboratively with the region to promote these activities and work with other South Metro cities for potentially new funding to further evaluate and implement some of these strategies that have been proposed in this blueprint plan. So that said, that was a lot. Let me pause and see if you guys have questions, comments, thoughts. I'm here to answer, and so is Joelle. So let me pause there.
First of all, thank you so much for this really thorough plan. This is really amazing to see. I just have like a basic question I should have asked a while ago about the recycling program. Is this about the statewide one? Does that mean that like any company, even like Amazon, has to pay for the recycling their packaging to be recycled?
Yeah, that's a good question. So in that law, producers of packaging have to pay into a fund. And that fund is based on kind of what type of material that they are producing. Like, if it's cardboard or plastics and what type of plastic, there's fees associated with all of that. And those funds go into a fund that will then be used to fund new infrastructure or covering the cost of recycling services for residents.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm. Any other thoughts or questions?
Hey, Helen, what,
Yes.
when you go to council with this, is this going as a package? In other words, is it the whole thing or nothing?
So they're gonna get a study session, give feedback. They are allowed to adopt with an amendment. They can do that for any plan they want, of saying, we want to adopt the whole thing but exclude this, and then adopt the rest.
Okay. I mean, my initial concern is there are certain pieces of this that, due to the history of the city, are just going to be looked upon and just summarily, let go of, because we've already faced the issues, particularly associated with single carriers. And I just wonder if there's a way to present this that sort of can allow soft pedaling of some of this so that other parts can make it through.
Yeah, Rick, we have definitely thought of that. And so this strategy was wordsmithed between me and Mel a few times. Because, in the beginning we said implement, but the way we softened that language so that council felt more comfortable is supporting the transition when it's financially and accessibility conducive. And what we mean by that is the last time single hauler was discussed at Englewood, there were residents who were concerned that they might lose alley collection, which a lot of haulers are moving towards curbside collection. But again, I think we are just in a really different environment when that contract went out to bid, because we didn't have EPR in play at the time. And the fact that recycling costs will be covered, net recycling costs, and communities will be reimbursed for that, and everyone will have access to it. I think it just provides such a different place of when we're talking about single hauler. I know there was a lot of, I talked through the history of it with the person who was trying to implement it at the time. And, but yeah, I think it's just a different time, and it's good for us to still evaluate. It would be a missed opportunity for council to not at least evaluate if this is a good fit now.
Helen, I also want to add to something important to note is some city council members made it to the Waste Diversion Summit. And I heard from a council member when they heard about how cheap Arvada is paying for their trash, they're like, I would have been more on board if we had pricing like that. So I wouldn't immediately assume that what they would go after or not go after, because like Helen said, it's such a different environment now after COVID.
Do you have a timeline for presenting this?
So we're going a study session on July 28th. And then it's going for adoption for first reading on the 18th, and the second reading will be on September 2nd.
Okay. Yeah, I recommend doing it sooner than later. That council may radically change as of November.
Yeah, definitely July, August is our time frame. And one of the things that we included in the plan is we have in the appendix a list of grants and funding opportunities that local governments can take advantage of. So C3 actually has another grant funding cycle, and it might be that because we were surprised that all 4 communities, well, Sheridan already has single hauler, but Littleton and Centennial, in addition to Englewood, are also looking at exploring the feasibility of organized residential collections, single hauler. So there's also power in numbers, the fact that others are looking at it as well at the same time. And it might be helpful for the city to say, hey, we want to do a detailed feasibility study of organized hauling. And what is that contract? What are some best practices to get the best pricing? And also, how can we take advantage of EPR and make sure we get reimbursed quickly for our residents? What does that implementation, detailed implementation pathways look like? So those are all steps I think the city can take. And we wanted to build the flexibility for staff to be agile and take those steps, but still allow, again, in this blueprint, language that's, I guess, palatable for the council at this current time.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Helen, I want to do a quick time check. I know we have 7 minutes left and still the letter
Sure.
of support if the Sustainability Commission is even interested. Just to check, how many people have a hard stop at 2? I know Helen and Joelle do, but on the commission, Logan, you do?
I can keep going too.
Pat, you do as well. Do we want to, I made a boilerplate letter of support, but also I think a good gut check is would this even have the support from the commission, at least 5 of the 6 of you?
It certainly had my support. And Helen, thank you for being here. This has been really fantastic. I just wanted to kind of, maybe Mel alluded to it. I wanted to get a sense from you, what would a letter of support look like from us? Would it just be sort of, we've spoken with you, we've talked about this 2 times as a commission, we generally approve of what's being set forth as a whole? What are you looking for from us that'd be most effective?
Helen, do you want to stop sharing? I can share my draft
Sure.
one and then tell me if it's
Yeah, go for it.
you or not. So I did a general one, if helpful, and again, if you all hate this and want to do a letter of support, like we can scrap it, but I just know time can be short sometimes. So I put like, Dear Mayor and City Council, on behalf of the Englewood Sustainability Commission, we write to express our full support for the South Metro Waste Diversion Plan, which we believe is a positive step towards achieving our community's environmental, economic, and climate resilience goals. The proposed plan outlines a comprehensive and actionable approach to diverting waste from landfills, reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and advancing a more circular, resource-efficient economy in Englewood. As an advisory board dedicated to promoting sustainability in Englewood, we strongly support initiatives that reduce environmental impacts through responsible materials management, reduce landfill dependence, align with adopted city goals such as those found in the sustainability plan around waste and recycling, promote equity and inclusion, ensuring all community members have access to sustainable waste diversion and education, and then encourage economic development through green jobs, local processing infrastructure, and resource recovery markets. And then it just says like, thank you for your commitment, and ending there. So that's like a template to go off of. You all can totally change it if you don't like it though, or if you don't have the support, you don't have to push it by. I don't want you all to feel like you have to if you're not comfortable with it.
I think
Sounds
this reads,
awesome.
yeah, I think this reads well, Mel. I wonder if we can add a sentence saying, let me think. We look forward to continuing the conversation, or we understand that this is not, binding, or just making that clear that, we're going to be a part of the conversation with council around all of these proposals going forward. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, what about this? Well, we know this is not binding. We look forward to helping implement the proposed plan, if adopted.
Or contributing to the implementation of. And I'll be quiet. I think Tracy and Lana has thoughts.
I just want to say I support it. I think that this is really wonderful. I'm really hopeful about the possibility of single hauler going forward. And Helen, and thank you for explaining that to us, like how much the environment has changed post-COVID and with this new law. And I'm hopeful that like the city council will understand that and see that it's more feasible in this new environment. So I think this is all wonderful.
Yay! Are we comfortable going to a vote in our last 3 minutes? Patrick as the chair, yes, do we want to have someone motion to approve the letter of support as it's written?
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
I know this is going to sound like Debbie Downer, but I want to be realistic. On behalf of the Englewood Sustainability Commission, we write to express our full support. Full support in my mind means that every person on the commission supports this. I think just support is fine.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Anything else? That was a great catch, Rick. Do we have someone that wants to motion approval of the letter of support as it's currently written and shown on the screen?
I would like to have a motion for approval of the letter that is currently written and shown on the screen.
You.
Second. Second.
Logan, you seconded?
Got a second. All right. All in favor, say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
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 Can we do actually
Alright.
raise a hand since it might be easier? Okay, we got Bruce, Rick, Logan, Tracy, Lana, then we got unanimous, yes!
All right. All against say nay? Nobody? All right. Very good.
Ooh.
Oh, I'm so glad I was part of this. This is really awesome. Thank you guys.
Too.
Thank
Yeah,
you. This was
Your
amazing,
answers-
Helen.
Thanks,
The
Helen, for
answers
making
are
time
really
for us.
thorough.
Patrick, do you want to call
Oh,
the
we
meeting?
can't wait.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you everyone for your time. Really appreciate it. But yeah, with that, we can go ahead and adjourn this meeting.
Thank you,
Awesome.
Helen.
Thank you so much,
Thank you so
Commission
much.
and Helen and Joelle.
Thank
Thank
you. Have a good
you.
day.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Mel, can I chat with you for a second?
Yes, let me.
I can give you a call on your cell.